These awful accidents, from Hamilton's catastrophic crash to Verstappen's dramatic event, which even ended a Formula One driver's career, have altered the sports landscape forever. In this video, we are dealing with the most brutal crashes in F1 history. 2016 is the year to start with Fernando Alonso. Alonso suffered a serious collision when he flew up against the wall during the Australian Grand Prix. Oh, look how far it went. He flipped through the air before stopping upside down at 200 miles per hour. Fortunately, he was unharmed and could get out of his McLaren. However, believe me when I say that what Max Verstappen's father, Jos, experienced was one of the most notorious fire incidents in Formula One history. At the 1994 Hockenheim race, Jos entered the pits after 15 laps expecting a regular pit stop, but instead he had the shock of his life. His hot car caught fire when fuel shot out of the refueling hose. Verstappen occurred in his car, and his surroundings took fire, causing this to become a major catastrophe. Everything went up in flames, and it was suddenly dark and black and I couldn't breathe, Jos said. Despite this disaster, the pit stopped refueling and remained in F1 until 2010. But eventually, after several more incidents occurred due to refueling, it got banned for good. Still, even though Jos survived his fiery crash, another driver couldn't, making it one of the worst moments in Formula One history. The San Marino GP collision in 1994 permanently altered Formula One. In qualifying, Austrian driver Roland Ratzenberger, who had only participated in 3 F1 races, slammed his car into a wall at a speed of 195.7 miles per hour. He lost, but regrettably it wasn't all. There are even rumors that the Brazilian was considering not competing in the Grand Prix because he was so devastated by the passing of Ratzenberger. Sadly, Senna decided to race, and on lap 7, he lost control of his car and hit a hidden exposed concrete barrier at a speed of about 192 miles per hour. Ratzenberger was one of the best F1 drivers in history and died the next day due to one of the most horrifying crashes in F1 history. With the increasing focus on the safety of F1 drivers to reduce potentially dangerous detachments and collisions during testing, tire barriers became essential due to this occurrence. Wheel tethers and rubber belts were used to fasten obstacles, but these horrific wrecks altered F1. Some accidents also destroyed one F1 driver's reputation. We all know which Russian driver to refer to when we say Nikita Mazepin's rookie season generated a lot of attention, but not for any positive reasons. He was already being criticized before his racing career began. Although his crash in the opening race didn't help, Sergio Perez repeatedly called him an idiot at the Portuguese Grand Prix. His relationship with an ex-teammate also made headlines. Roman Grosjean experienced a terrible incident on the opening lap of the 2018 Bahrain Grand Prix. His collision with a metal barrier at 119 miles per hour produced a peak force of 67 Gs. This caused an explosion, causing the car to split in half. We're referring to Lewis Hamilton and Nico Rosberg. Despite winning the Constructors and Drivers' Championships, things started to get personal for the Mercedes drivers, especially when the pair collided on the first lap of the Spanish Grand Prix. The crash was so severe that Mercedes threatened to fire both drivers. However, what's interesting is that the two were childhood friends and even teammates. Both drivers pushed each other to the maximum, and Niki Lauda emphasized that this caused the incident, but it turns out this crash was nothing. When the 1976 German Grand Prix took place, parts of the Nürburgring circuit were wet due to bad weather and track coverage. However, despite being the fastest driver on the course, Lauda voiced his displeasure with the track and asked his fellow competitors to abandon the race. Unfortunately, he was outvoted, and as a result, the race continued. This contrasts with the crash that Niki experienced during his racing career, which was so catastrophic that it forced F1 to make changes. The Austrian driver was severely burned on his head and hands and inhaled hot fumes that damaged his lungs. After being taken to the hospital, he fell into a coma and was even given his last rites, but he survived, thank God. Nicholas Latifi's crashes were also defined, but not how he wanted. Latifi destroyed Mercedes in the final laps of the 2021 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. As sorry as Latifi was about the incident, he did little to change his status as he crashed behind a safety car at the Monaco Grand Prix. Latifi said, "The throttle didn't get stuck, but it was like it got stuck. It was strange and surprising simultaneously, and I was already going so slowly there. I was just a passenger at that point. The car was driving forward and I was not on the gas, so I didn't know what was happening there." That's one way to phrase it, but surprisingly it wasn't the only. He got disoriented and took a wrong turn during the Japanese Grand Prix practice. He turned around and proceeded in the opposite direction of where he was supposed to go on the track. This was readily observed, but instead of taking responsibility again, he justified the incident by blaming the strangeness of the car. Sadly, we can't say the same for Antoine Hubert since, as we all know, the crash he was involved in was tragic, while happily Latifi's wrecks didn't result in any significant injuries. The F2 driver collided at high speed during the Belgian Grand Prix. Juan Manuel Correa struck Hubert on the second lap and his car was demolished. Antoine could not survive due to his wounds. Jackie Stewart, a legend of Formula One racing, also had a similar incident at the same corner. Stewart was hanging upside down with petrol dripping down his face when his car crashed at the Spa track, leaving him facing his demise. 2 other drivers successfully pulled him from his car, and ever since he has spearheaded numerous efforts to improve driver safety. However, it's surprising that his first impression was that seatbelts were uncomfortable and unneeded. However, he has now had a change of heart, after numerous new safety measures saved many drivers' lives. When I first started in the Formula One world, the tracks were dangerous, he said. There were no runoff areas and it was just crazy. They were up close and personal with ridiculous things like telegraph poles. When Carlos Sainz's accident pushed the FIA to examine its seatbelt rule more closely, Stewart had already altered his mind about it. Carlos Sainz struck the ball with great force at the Ascari chicane of the Monza circuit's second practice. Sainz was wearing a seatbelt, but the collision was so strong that it caused him to be propelled quite far toward the steering wheel. This very much frightened F1 fans. Even while the FIA acknowledged that Sainz's instance was peculiar, it is typical for seatbelts to give somewhat under impact, because doing so is much safer for the human body than when they are rigid. Michael Massey commented, "I think the belts are made to stretch. As with any major or noteworthy incident, we will look at the belt stretch and see what we can learn from it." However, despite this accident giving the FIA ideas for enhancing the sport, a different accident led to arguments among Red Bull's teammates and even the departure of one of them from the racing team. Max Verstappen and Daniel Ricciardo, 2 Red Bull drivers competing on the long straight at the 2018 Azerbaijan Grand Prix, collided. Verstappen defended very strongly and Ricciardo attacked too aggressively, resulting in a double DNF. Both of them appeared to be moving under braking. After the race, Ricciardo even said that Verstappen slamming into him irritated him. His annoyance grew when he saw that his crew refused to assist him. "We touched wheels a few times, but it was always Max coming into me rather than me going into Max. Part of me was waiting for the team to say cut the shit, but never really got that. I will say now, fuck you guys." But Ricciardo later remarked that Verstappen was about to call it quits at the time of the Baku incident, ultimately leading him to leave the Milton Keynes-based team. Christian Horner said Ricciardo was allegedly running from a fight with his teammate. We all know who ended up where today. Verstappen has won 2 championships already, and judging by Red Bull's performance, he will likely win 5 titles before long. However, Ricciardo did go back to Red Bull, but he did so as the backup driver for his former colleague. Even still, this collision paled compared to Guan Yu Zhao's accident in the British Grand Prix. Guan Yu Zhao, the Alfa Romeo driver, and George Russell crashed on the first lap of the race. The collision sent Zhao's vehicle hurtling over the track, sliding on its halo, and crashing over a concrete barrier into the retaining wall. This collision was so severe that Zhao spent significant time upside down and practically skidding. However, thanks to the halo, Zhao was thankfully unharmed. He even acknowledged this on Twitter, that the halo saved his life. The halo is only one of the many innovations demonstrating how much F1 has improved in terms of safety and saved many lives. That's all for today. If you like this video, do give us a thumbs up and comment on how you feel about these crashes. Subscribe to the channel for more such videos.